In this episode of Voice of the Sea, we're looking at the connections between humans, cats, monk seals, and the disease Toxoplasmosis. Monk seals have lived in Hawaii for over 3 million years, but their population has been severely depleted by human influences and habitat loss. Recently, death from toxoplasmosis has added another challenge to the recovery of the Hawaiian monk seal population. We talked to experts from NOAA, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and the Hawaiian Humane Society. We start off talking to Hawaiian monk seal veterinarian Michelle Barbieri.
The science that I tend to be the most involved with my discipline is animal health, population monitoring, and individual animal care sometimes as well. We're the group of scientists that go out and report back on how the species is doing year to year and describe the threats to the species as well. Right now, there's a little over 1,500 monk seals in the population, and that's from our 2021 population estimate. That growth has been sustained at an average of 2% per year since 2013.
What would be considered success in terms of species recovery?
In the main Hawaiian Islands, we would like to see one of the recovery goals as being there 500 seals here. Right now, that population is growing, and we estimate that there's around 300, 350 seals. But recovery is much more than just a number. Recovery is sustaining that number and sustaining growth. Because they live in the tropics, they're a seal that is probably always functioning on that nutritional knife's edge. They're susceptible to much bigger changes in the oceans as well, climate changes and oceanographic shifts, temperature shifts that move prey around. At least at this point in time and where we are right now, we're generally seeing that seals have access to the resources that they need here and are faced with greater competition in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. The threats in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands are food limitation. We also see shark predation at very specific sites. We see entrapment in degrading infrastructure in parts of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands that were formerly inhabited by people, as well as entrapment in entanglement in marine debris. There are also a variety of other threats that are seal to seal or conspecific interactions like male aggression, and sometimes pups that get separated from mom and things like that. So all of our interventions target all those different needs and the threats that they're facing.
And what about here in the main Hawaiian Islands?
Here in the main Hawaiian Islands, it's a bit different. So we tend not to see seals that are struggling from food limitation. In fact, we see seals that are typically a bit healthier in body condition. We unfortunately, though, see them affected by more anthropogenic things because their range is overlapping with a really robust population of people. And so those are primarily fisheries interactions like ingesting dangerous fishing gear.
Let them roll. Nice, and we're clear.
Getting caught and drowning in nets. And then there's a disease threat that the population is facing, which is toxoplasmosis.
And can you tell me about toxoplasmosis and its effect on monk seals?
Yeah, so unfortunately, when we first started learning about this threat and detecting it, it was through examining dead monk seals. And for a long time, we saw this pop up with animals on the necropsy table, and they were just found acutely dead, which was tough and surprising and unexpected. It is to note that the disease toxoplasmosis is the cause of death for those animals. They're sick throughout all of their body tissues. We collect samples from all of the tissues, and we see inflammation in all of those tissues, in all of their internal fat stores, in their brain, in their lungs, in their liver, in their heart, in their muscle tissue. They are riddled with the replicating stage of the parasite and the destruction that it causes in those tissues. The information we have right now suggests most seals haven't been exposed. When they do, it sends them down a pretty negative spiral pretty quickly, and it's really difficult to bring them back. We're also, in conjunction with the Marine Mammal Center, looking to do the very best that we can to treat seals and try to bring them back from this disease. It's proving to be really, really difficult. It's challenging, it's heart-wrenching, it's hard on the animals, it's hard on the people, and we haven't been successful yet. Of the 15 seals that have stranded with toxoplasmosis, there have been 4 that were alive at the time of stranding, so they've all died to this point, and treatment is really difficult on the seal and the team. One example of that is from a seal that was named Pohaku, RO28. She stranded on Oahu with toxoplasmosis and was in care for several weeks. When she ultimately died, she had severe brain damage, and we don't know if that brain damage was something that we'd ever be able to reverse with time, even though we were able to successfully kill a lot of the parasites that were in her body.
How are the monk seals getting toxoplasmosis?
So they get toxoplasmosis by ingesting the parasite, whether it's through the water column or through prey. We don't know exactly what that source is. They don't typically just drink water in the ocean, but they are benthic feeders. So that means that monk seals typically find cryptic prey on the bottom of the ocean, and that could be that those are either filter feeders that are picking up the toxoplasma parasite from the ocean and are retaining that in their tissues and passing it to monk seals. It could be that they're encountering it when they're incidentally ingesting some water with a prey item, or that they're getting it from biofilms. There's been a lot of science that's looked at how those parasite organisms are retained by things like algae in the marine environment. It could be a number of ways that they're getting exposed. We don't know exactly, but it's definitely through ingestion. Our group with NOAA, there's a core of about 5 of us that are most involved in the issue, whether it be through the science or the management side or both. And then we work with a whole host of federal, state, and county agency folks that are now by the dozens to really just share information and communicate about this threat. We know that adult females during pregnancy can pass this parasite on to a fetus. The fact that we have some examples of that throughout the main Hawaiian Islands where we've been monitoring this disease is really an indication, again, of how important it is to protect those adult females and how impactful it is when we lose them to toxoplasmosis.
University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program, focused on Hawaii's coasts and its communities through sustainable development, safe seafood supply, sustainable coastal tourism, hazard resilience, and healthy coastal ecosystems. Hawaii's Sea Grant.
You're watching Voice of the Sea. We're talking about toxoplasmosis and why free-roaming cats are the primary spreaders of this disease. Stacy Robinson explains.
Hi, I'm Stacy Robinson. I'm a research ecologist for the NOAA Hawaiian Monk Seal Research Program. Toxoplasmosis is a disease which is caused by this little parasitic organism called Toxoplasma gondii. This parasite, it can infect basically any warm-blooded creatures. Humans get it. It's actually one of the more common foodborne illnesses. This parasite can infect a number of animals, but it can only complete its life cycle in one type of animal, and that's felids, or cats. The parasite does its sexual reproduction inside the gut of the cat, so in the cat's intestines, and it produces these reproductive structures. It's basically like their egg. They're almost like armored, so they are really environmentally hardy. So these egg-like structures are going to last in the environment for a really long time, which can become problematic when you're worried about other wildlife becoming exposed to them. And that armored egg-like structure is called an oocyst. Those oocysts are shed in cat feces. What we're interested in is how those oocysts get from scattered on the environment where the cats are living down into the coastal environment where monk seals are living and can become exposed and get this very deadly pathogen. The oocysts are out in the environment. They might be attached to some soil, attached to some grass, and the whole idea is that other animals come along, so things like mice, birds are going to come and eat the Toxoplasma oocysts. And then those mice and birds become prey items for the cat. That's the way the toxoplasma gets back into the cat body to once again complete its life cycle in the gut of the cat. The problem is with these oocysts being so long-lived and so widespread in the environment, they can also travel through the environment, especially with the hydrology like we have in the islands. Things can very easily get washed from Mauka to Makai and end up in the marine environment as well, and then species that aren't even part of this life cycle, that aren't even going to help the pathogen Toxoplasma complete its life cycle at all, but they can become infected, and then it can be really detrimental to species like Hawaiian monk seals.
When you say these oocysts are really hardy and they can last a long time, what does that mean?
It means years. One of the main studies that we have to go by tracked in samples, and they were still viable, so not just there, but they could still cause infections after 2 years. And then their funding ran out and the study ended. So what we say is they can last for at least 2 years because people really have had trouble studying them for a longer period than that.
At this point, do you have any generalities that are coming out of your models, say with respect to companion cats that are outside versus colony cats?
One of the biggest take-homes, which I don't know, I found a little bit surprising, because being a biologist and working in conservation, I feel like I usually think a lot more about the feral cats that are up in the hillsides and probably predating on birds and might be a much bigger piece of, that side of the risk. But it actually turns out that it's the most human-associated cats that are posing the biggest risk for toxoplasmosis. Where humans are denser, these cats are also denser because they're getting more care. Those are the areas that are the closest to the coast. Those are areas that are more paved and have stormwater systems, and runoff is easier and more efficient. And so it's going to carry more of those oocysts to the sea. And the other big piece of it is those animals that are getting care and food from humans can just exist at a density that would be unheard of for feral cats that have to feed themselves in the wild. They can certainly be impactful, right? I know on Kauai they've had some really impactful footage of, it can take one cat in a bird colony to knock out that bird colony. But from a density standpoint of how many cats are putting how many oocysts on the environment, that one cat just doesn't even compare to 50 cats that are getting fed in a parking lot in town. On average, the outdoor, the wild cats, the colony cats, the strays, the ferals, they might be more likely to have about 3 to 4% of cats shedding at any given time, whereas the household cats might be down like 0.3 or 0.4%. So it can actually be up to a 10-fold difference in the probability of shedding. For example, say like the colony cats where they're living outdoors, they have access to wild prey, they're going to be supplementing their diet with wild prey, they're going to be completing that toxoplasma life cycle, but they're also supplemented with food and care by people enough that their populations are like a really elevated density. You've got the elevated density from some amount of human care, but you've got the toxo life cycle being completed because they also are eating wild food. Of course, then that means they can contribute much more oocyst contamination to the environment. If the most impactful cats are the ones that are most associated with humans, that means that we have an opportunity to really change something. In one of the more recent surveys that the Humane Society did, about 20% of Hawaii households owned cats, and over half of those households were allowing their cats outdoors. So if you've got 20% of people owning cats and over half of them are going outdoors, that adds up to a lot of outdoor companion cats really quickly.
Do you have cats?
I do. I have one cat, and she stays inside.
We are looking for a few heroes, mentors, trailblazers, innovators, a passion to change lives, spark curiosity, open hearts, and awaken minds. help students answer the question, who am I? This could be your calling, but this is no job. It's the journey of a lifetime. Be a hero. Be a teacher.
You're watching Voice of the Sea. We're talking with experts who are reducing free-roaming cat populations in Hawaii. We meet up with Steph Kendrick from the Hawaiian Humane Society. But first, I talk with Angela Amlin from the National Marine Fisheries Service.
I'm the Hawaiian monk seal recovery coordinator. Recovery of a species is when it reaches a point where there's a sufficient number of individuals that it can be taken off the endangered species list. And so my goal is to coordinate our internal efforts, our partners, work with stakeholders to make sure everyone is working toward that goal of recovery. And that involves evaluating threats, prioritizing those threats, figuring out what management actions and outreach is needed to address those threats, and then helping everyone move that forward.
What is your work with respect to management of cats in Hawaii, and how does that interact with taking care of monk seals?
The top 3 threats to monk seals in the main Hawaiian Islands are intentional killings, fisheries interactions, and toxoplasmosis, which is a disease that is only spread in the feces of cats. And so that's where cats came onto the radar because of this biological relationship that they have with this protozoal parasite, and the fact that monk seals are so susceptible to the disease. It came onto our radar around 2015 and has just really become one of our priority threats that we've been addressing since then. One of the challenges with toxoplasmosis is it seems to particularly impact adult females and adult pregnant females. And so we are seeing that toxoplasmosis has suppressed the potential growth rate of the population in the main Hawaiian Islands.
Toxoplasmosis not only affects wildlife, but also humans. Across the U.S., the CDC estimates that 30 million people have been infected.
So when we consider the potential impact that toxoplasmosis has, we need to look at the individual that's getting infected, the pathogen itself, the infectious pathogen, and the environment. And all of these things will come together and influence what the outcome will be when an infection occurs. And that could be a person who lives their whole life not knowing they're infected. It could be loss of a pregnancy. We've seen this in monk seals and we see it in people. This is why doctors advise pregnant women not to clean litter boxes, all the way up to severe organ failure and death. We don't know exactly where an individual is going to land on that scale, but your immune system is definitely going to play a role there. I'm not a medical doctor, but what we do understand is immunologically compromised individuals are going to be more susceptible to something like toxoplasmosis. One of the things that we need to consider is the fact that there were no native felids here, so a lot of our species here didn't evolve alongside cats and toxoplasmosis and may not have developed a resistance to it. We found it in Hawaiian spinner dolphins. It's been impacting the alala as well, which is hard since they're trying to reintroduce them to the wild. And then the monk seals, of course.
A cat owner. How do you take care of your cat in a responsible and loving way?
I have 2 cats and my 2 girls stay inside. I am lucky in a sense that I live on the 3rd floor of a building and I have a lanai that they can't get off of. My cats will sit outside on the lanai and snooze in the sun for part of the day. No birds are landing on my lanai because they see the cats, so they can't get to the birds. They get a little bit of exposure and they're coming inside using a litter box, which I dispose of in the trash. I don't flush. And that way there's no toxo getting into the environment. There's no predation happening. Toxoplasmosis oocysts, which you can think of kind of like eggs, are so microscopic and so hardy that they can survive most treatment efforts. And I make sure that I provide enrichment for my cats. I think there's a misperception that cats are different from dogs and they're aloof and they don't need this engagement, they're so independent, but they really do, particularly to fulfill those natural urges like pouncing and seeking. And so if we can provide those enrichment opportunities for them, then we're fulfilling those needs and keeping them happy, healthy, and safe in a home, as well as keeping people, our environment, and our wildlife safe. One of the things coming out of a lot of these collaborations is an understanding that we need to know how many cats are on the landscape in order to come up with effective management strategies. On Oahu alone, we've had estimates ranging from 50,000 to 300,000 cats, and those are very different management plans. So if we know how many cats are on the landscape and where they are, then we can collaborate to come up with effective strategies. What's happening right now on Oahu and soon to happen on Maui is these cat counting efforts. We've been trying to support those efforts, connect partners together, take a look at the methodology which was created on the mainland and help adapt it to needs here in Hawaii. I do think that near-term success is feasible, especially if we have the tools, the science, and the partnerships to do it.
We're in the Memory Garden at the Hawaiian Humane Society, which is in Mo'iliili on Oahu. We're the largest animal welfare organization in the state of Hawaii.
What is your mission here?
Our mission is to advocate for the human-animal bond and the humane treatment of all animals. Most of our work currently focuses on companion animals, but historically we've also taken a very strong stance on protecting wildlife, and we were actually founded to protect working animals. Our goal is to have no cats born outside at all. We would love to see no more kittens come into our doors from being born outside. That would be amazing, and that's what we're really investing a lot of resources into trying to make happen. In addition, we would like to see any pet animal that a person cannot keep go to an animal welfare organization or a new home rather than going outside. And we would like to see the cats who are already living outside and who are healthy, but who obviously aren't having the ideal life and do have some concerns about the environment, we would like to see those populations managed to their natural extinction over time. I think what I ultimately want to share is that we are all animal people. You know, that's where all of us are coming from, and we don't want to see harm come to a monk seal any more than we want to see harm come to a cat. And I think as thoughtful, caring people on the conservation and animal welfare side, the more we can do, not necessarily to agree on everything, because we won't, but to understand each other, to understand where we're coming from, to respect where each other's coming from, and to find those areas where we can work together on common ground to make a difference. That, to me, is kind of what gets me up in the morning. That's really exciting to me.
Can you give me a timeline perspective? How long have there been cats in Hawaii, do we know? And how long have people been trying to manage their population?
There have been cats in Hawaii since at least the 1800s, and they were brought over initially mostly for pest control, which is a role, of course, they still play for a lot of folks. Pet-animal relationship has evolved enormously just over almost our lifetimes, or maybe our parents' generation, but that bond has changed enormously so that cats are now thought of more as family members than as mousers, you know?
Right.
So that's been a fairly recent evolution. In terms of going forward, how long it's going to take us to reduce that population, to get that population under control, is going to depend on how fast can we change that human behavior. How fast can we convince people that their pet cat is happier inside? How fast can the caregivers do their work to spay neuter all of the animals that are already out there? 20 years from today, could we see an end to kittens being born outside? Yeah, we could. We could see it sooner than that. And I'd like to see it as soon as possible.
Reducing free roaming cat populations and toxoplasmosis requires community input. You can help by getting your cat spayed or neutered, keeping your cat indoors when possible, and reporting stray cat colonies to the Humane Society. Learn more at voiceofthesea.org. Follow us on social media at Voice of the Sea TV. Mahalo for watching Voice of the Sea. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is the dynamic curriculum developed by the University of Hawaii's Curriculum Research and Development Group. The award-winning Fluid Earth and Living Ocean textbooks are now interactive and online. New activities, updated content, and a teacher community. Exploring Our Fluid Earth is now freely available. Find out more at exploringourfluidearth.org.